Okay, so today we're going to take a deep dive into something pretty wild, actually.
Yeah, this is a big one.
Yeah, Donald Trump's nomination of Pete Hegseth as the Secretary of Defense.
Bro, right.
And, just to get us started, why don't you give us like a quick rundown of like who Pete Hegseth is and like why this is such a big deal?
Sure. So Pete Hegseth, he's a former Army officer.
Okay.
He served in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Okay.
And after leaving the military, he became a pretty prominent conservative commentator.
Right. I feel like I've seen him on like Fox News and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. He's been a regular presence on Fox News for quite a while now.
Gotcha.
And he's known for his very strong support of Donald Trump and his policies.
Okay.
So you can already see how this nomination is kind of stirring the pot.
Yeah, for sure.
You've got one side that's praising Trump for picking someone who they see as a strong leader who's not afraid to speak his mind.
And then you've got the other side that's really worried about Hegseth's qualifications and his temperament.
Right. So it seems like kind of the main sticking point for a lot of people is his lack of experience, right?
Yeah, that's definitely a big one.
He's never actually like held a high-level position in the Pentagon or anything like that.
Right, exactly. I mean, he has his military background from serving, but in terms of, the kind of experience you expect from someone leading the entire Department of Defense,
Right.
it's pretty thin.
Yeah, and it's not just the lack of like government or like policy experience, right?
Sure.
It's also some of the things that he's said and done in the past that have people kind of raising an eyebrow.
Exactly. There are a number of incidents and comments that have drawn criticism.
Like what kind of stuff?
Well, there was that time he smashed a guitar on Fox and Friends.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and some people saw that as being disrespectful to the military, making light of a military ban.
Right. And then there is his comments about things like diversity and inclusion in the military.
Yeah, I remember him being pretty vocal about what he calls, quote unquote, woke policies.
Right, as a big critic of those policies. He argues that they're actually hurting military readiness.
So when we talk about woke policies in the military, what are we actually talking about?
So we're talking about things like, diversity initiatives, inclusion training, things like that.
Okay.
And Hegseth's argument is that these policies are distracting from the military's core mission, which is, national defense.
Right, and I mean, it's not just him, right? There's a whole segment of people who believe that these woke policies are actually weakening the military.
Yeah, it's a pretty common talking point on the right these days.
Okay, so basically we've got this kind of fundamental question here, right? Is it more important for the Secretary of Defense to be ideologically aligned with the president?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it more important for them to have, deep experience and a steady hand?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
And this nomination, it kind of throws that whole debate into sharp relief.
It does, and it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think are some of the potential consequences of this nomination?
Well, if Hegseth is confirmed, it could mean a pretty significant shift in the direction of the Department of Defense.
Okay.
He's likely to try to roll back some of those woke policies that he's been so critical of.
Right.
And he's also likely to be very hawkish on foreign policy, in line with Trump's views.
Right, which could mean, more military interventionism around the world.
Potentially, yeah.
So some pretty big implications there. And I think this deep dive, it really kind of highlights the dangers of political polarization, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you've got this situation where a position that's supposed to be about, national security and military expertise has become incredibly politicized.
Yeah.
And that's a really worrying trend, I think.
Absolutely. Lots to think about here. And I think this deep dive has really kind of given our listeners a lot to chew on.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah. So thanks for breaking it all down for us.
No problem. Happy to be here.
And for all of you listening out there, keep those brains buzzing, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.